Hey, welcome back to Landscape Alert, where this week we are going to be designing a restaurant patio. So I have a friend and he asked me, hey, we have a restaurant and we actually want to make this patio usable. What can we do? And so I actually went over. You can see earlier the footage. And now it's my turn to come up with a design for this area. Keep in mind that this at one point was used for a patio for storage and a few other things. And now they're remodeling for specifically for an area where you can have tables and people can sit down, have a good time outside. So now that we have a little bit of the context behind this design, which I will say it's not super complex, but even then you still need to add a few different things. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm going off with this. So one of the things that you probably will notice is that there is already an existing tree there, and we are going to be using that to hang some lights and a few other things around it. There is going to be some trimming of that tree. A few of the branches are going to get in the way, and some of those are not even no longer alive, so some trimming is needed for those. But right below there, we are going to be putting a small elevated wall for a planter area right next to the tree. So some of the measurements, just if in case that this were to be your scenario that you are thinking of doing something similar to this, which may or may not be the case. What we're working with here is we have a sidewalk that's 4 feet. The length of this total area is of 105 feet, and then the other space is of the width is 44 feet, and of course we have a few other measurements that we need to do. One of them is around the tree, which is in fact 8 feet by 13 in the area. So that's kind of what we have there. Now, right below the tree, as I mentioned a second ago, is that we're going to be building a planter bed. And in that area, you're going to have an area of mulch and also some perennials. And we're going to talk about the perennials in just a bit. Now, we are going to have similar planter beds along the fence. So earlier you probably saw some posts. That is where they are going to be building a wall fence just for privacy. You know, there are other people behind there. And so if you're there with, say, your family or whoever you're with, you want a bit of that privacy when you're eating your food, especially if this is like a restaurant. You definitely want to have something there, you know, to give you that privacy or as much as possible. So we're going to have some other planter beds. In fact, 3 of them. And they're going to be of similar sizes as the one below the tree, which are going to be about 20 inches or so, and that's including the caps. Now, the idea behind this is in case for whatever reason there's people out there and they're waiting for a table, maybe they can sit down out there. At least it's usable, even if nobody ever really uses it to sit down, but you could potentially. So we have that. And then one of the key things about this to make this area nice is to have a water feature. So one of the ideas that I was talking about here, at least in this design, was to have a wall where you would potentially have 3 bowls where water would come into them, and then you would have essentially 2 falls, one that would go from the wall to the bowl, and then from the bowl down to where it's going to disappear, and then you gotta have the whole cycle over and over again. So instead of having one, you can have 3 of them. Now, originally it had a different design, and I'm going to show it to you here. Now, I will say that the one I'm showing you right now, that was with my CAT program. This one is with the Concepts app, which I definitely like, especially for sketching. This also allows you to do sketches with actual measurements, so it's very useful. But that out of the way, this is the idea where you would have this, and maybe above it you would have the name of the restaurant, and you can also have some accenting lights to kind of give it that extra pop, especially at night. At the same time, have some hanging lights that connect from the tree or using the tree maybe wrapping around the tree a little bit of this, having some of those hanging lights would just give it that extra touch again to make this area have a nice mood, to be, back there eating with your friends, that sort of stuff. Now, going back now to those planter beds I spoke about earlier and some of the shrubs, mostly shrubs and perennials that we would use in this area are going to be the following. Now, I should say that this area is in Denver, Colorado, so about 5,000 plus feet in elevation. So keep this in mind if you live in this area. These are some of the shrubs. There is so many that you can use, but one thing that I was thinking about this is that, one, you don't want to have shrubs that are going to get too big. That's one thing. The other thing is that you don't want to have a lot of shrubs that's going to attract a lot of bees. Not that you don't want bees and or butterflies, but unfortunately there's people that don't like one or the other, and some do also have allergies, especially with bees. So you definitely want to be careful if you're doing something like this. So for that reason, I stood away from a few of those trees, specifically shrubs and perennials. So let's talk about some of the shrubs that I think would be able to be used in this small area, but having in mind that you want it to be green as long as possible, at least to have a nice color, at least to have a good amount of color. So here are some of my ideas for this area. Something like maybe a privet, that would give you more of the broad ever leaf, at least a look as much as possible. Some of those will go dormant, and it's also going to depend on the area that you live. In this case, because it does have a lot of walls, even though it's gonna get cold because the winter and so forth and so on, it's going to have a good amount of protection from the wall right behind it and also from the restaurant itself. So that's one of them. Rose of Sharon, Russian almond. Now in between those planter beds, I was thinking something a little tall, also evergreen, maybe something like a skyrocket juniper would work really well. Grape holly. Now I know that's a bit of a thing that I just said earlier about having things with no thorns. This one does have thorns, but I think you can still put it in there. Hopefully, if you were to do something like this, people would stay away from touching your plants. No reason to touch them, but it looks great. But again, this is going to be one of those that maybe not. Also, boxwood, azalea. Again, some ideas. There's not a lot of space, so there's not a lot of things that I would want to recommend, just like a ton of them, even though you could. But the space, unfortunately, is limited. So the other thing as far as perennials that I think you could put, which is quite a few, I would say. Now you have your classics like, say, daylilies or irises, but we can also do some pensimons, some Jupiter beard, hostas, of course, some coral bells, some blue leawood or plumbago. Those look great, I will say. And also Decentra. Again, really good looking perennials. Now, kids could potentially mess with them, so there's going to be that. Now that's going to be probably the management team that will probably take care of that, but that's just an idea that could work for this area. I am working right now with the owners to kind of bring this to life, but this would definitely work for a patio. Now, this is going to be the first phase. Later on, they're going to be adding more and more stuff, potentially like an outdoor bar and maybe something else, maybe even a stage for some music, that type of thing. But this is the initial ideas to get started. Now, what do you guys think about any of this? Are any of this shrubs and or perennials something that you want to use in your area? Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you like any of this content. I definitely would like to hear your thoughts. And also, if you guys are doing your own projects, how about tagging us and maybe your pictures if you put them on, say, Instagram and or TikTok? Here is where you can find us. And again, guys, don't forget our motto over here, which is Dream, Design, Create. And I will see you guys on the next video. Take care. Bye.